Billy Sullivan's eyes widened as he stared at the alien's smooth, featureless crotch. "What's that between your legs?" he blurted out, then immediately regretted his lack of tact. The Prilorian Izar tilted her head in confusion, her large eyes blinking rapidly. She gestured to Billy's lower half, her blue-tinted fingers trembling as she pointed at his visible male anatomy. This bizarre first contact scenario unfolded in the most unlikely of places, a cornfield in rural Iowa. Just hours earlier, Billy had been tending to his crops, the former Navy SEAL turned farmer enjoying the quiet life he'd built for himself. That peace shattered when a blinding light streaked across the sky, followed by an earth-shaking impact that rattled windows for miles. Billy's training kicked in as he raced toward the crash site in his pickup. The acrid smell of burning metal filled his nostrils as he approached the wreckage of what was clearly not a terrestrial craft. Its sleek, otherworldly design left no doubt. Aliens had arrived on Earth. As flames licked at the downed vessel, Billy spotted movement inside. Without hesitation, he smashed through the cracked view screen, ignoring the searing heat as he pulled the ship's lone occupant to safety. The alien's environmental suit was badly damaged, and she gasped for breath in Earth's atmosphere. Thinking quickly, Billy grabbed a roll of duct tape and some plastic sheeting from his truck. With steady hands, he fashioned a makeshift seal over the suit's breeches. The alien's labored breathing eased, and she gazed at him with unmistakable gratitude. It was then that Billy truly took in her alien features, the blue tint to her skin, those huge, expressive eyes, and the complete lack of external genitalia. His shock must have shown on his face, as the alien seemed equally fascinated by his human form. Their silent exchange was interrupted by the arrival of black SUVs and helicopters. Government agents swarmed the crash site, quickly quarantining the area and whisking both Billy and the alien away for questioning. In a sterile medical facility, Billy learned the truth. The alien, named Izar, was part of an advanced species called the Prilorians. They were facing a severe reproductive crisis and had come to Earth seeking compatible species for genetic diversification. As Izar recovered, she began teaching Billy about her people and their technology. In turn, he introduced her to human customs and biology, their growing bond becoming the unexpected linchpin of human-Prilorian relations. Government officials, recognizing the potential benefits of an alliance with such an advanced race, tasked Billy with becoming Earth's de facto ambassador. His connection with Izar made him uniquely suited for the role. But not everyone welcomed the aliens with open arms. Tensions simmered as some human factions voiced concerns about potential colonization. Others saw an opportunity for humanity to flex its muscles on the galactic stage. As a Prilorian diplomatic envoy entered Earth's orbit, the stakes couldn't be higher. The fate of both species hung in the balance, with Billy and Izar's unlikely partnership at the center of it all. Humanity stood on the brink of a new era, one that would test not just their technological prowess, but their capacity for understanding and acceptance in the face of the utterly alien. The sterile white walls of the Nevada facility seemed to close in around Billy as he paced the length of his quarters. It had been 3 months since that fateful day in the cornfield, and his life had transformed beyond recognition. He paused at the window, gazing out at the vast desert landscape dotted with military vehicles and high-tech security measures. A soft chime signaled an incoming message on his tablet. Billy swiped the screen, revealing a notification for his next diplomatic briefing. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. The former Navy SEAL had faced countless dangerous missions, but none had prepared him for the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. As he made his way through the facility's winding corridors, Billy's thoughts drifted to Izar. The Prilorian had become a constant presence in his life, her alien features now as familiar to him as his own reflection. He found her waiting outside the briefing room, her large eyes blinking rapidly in what he'd come to recognize as excitement. "Billy," Izar said, her melodious voice tinged with an otherworldly accent. "The High Counselor's ship has entered Earth's atmosphere. They will be landing within the hour." He nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and trepidation. "Thanks, Izar. Are you ready for this?" Before she could respond, a thunderous roar filled the air. The entire facility seemed to vibrate as the massive Prilorian mothership descended from the clouds, its sleek design dwarfing even the largest human aircraft carriers. Billy and Izar rushed to the nearest viewport, joined by a crowd of awestruck personnel. The ship's landing sent tremors through the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust that obscured the view for several minutes. As the air cleared, Billy caught his first glimpse of High Counselor Zara. The Prilorian leader exuded an air of authority that transcended species, her ornate robes shimmering with an iridescent quality that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of introductions and preliminary discussions. Billy found himself thrust into the role of mediator, translating not just words, but cultural nuances between the two species. He couldn't help but notice the intense interest the Prilorians showed in human biology, their questions often veering towards reproductive capabilities. As the day wore on, Billy retreated to the facility's recreation area. Seeking a moment of respite, he found Izar there, seated before a large aquarium, her eyes fixed on the colorful fish within. "How are you holding up?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her. Izar turned to him, her expression unreadable. "The atmosphere here, it strains my body, but I am managing." She gestured to a small device attached to her environmental suit. "This helps, but I will need to return to the treatment chamber soon." Billy felt a pang of concern. Despite their growing closeness, there were still so many barriers between them: physical, biological, cultural. He was about to speak when alarms blared throughout the facility. Security personnel rushed past them as a voice crackled over the intercom. "Code Red, hostile forces approaching the main gate. All non-essential personnel report to designated safe zones immediately." Billy's training kicked in. He grabbed Izar's hand, leading her swiftly through the chaos to the command center. Monitors displayed a group of armed protesters led by a stern-faced man Billy recognized from intelligence briefings, Colonel Jack Hawkins. The next hour was a blur of tense negotiations and barely averted violence. Billy found himself on the front lines, using every ounce of his diplomatic skills to defuse the situation. In the end, several humans and Prilorians were injured, but a full-scale disaster was avoided. In the aftermath, Billy sat slumped in a chair, exhaustion etched on his features. High Counselor Zara approached, her piercing gaze fixed upon him. "You have proven yourself today, Ambassador Sullivan," she said, her tone formal yet tinged with respect. "But this incident has made clear the challenges we face in forging an alliance between our peoples." Billy straightened, meeting her gaze. "With all due respect, High Counselor, I believe I have a solution." He outlined his plan for a cultural exchange program, watching as interest sparked in the Prilorian leader's eyes. The proposal set off a firestorm of debate among both humans and Prilorians. Billy spent the next weeks in endless meetings, arguing passionately for the program's potential to bridge the gap between their species. Throughout it all, Izar remained by his side, offering insights into Prilorian culture that proved invaluable. Billy found himself increasingly drawn to her, their shared experiences forging a bond that defied easy categorization. As the exchange program took shape, Billy grappled with a growing internal conflict. His feelings for Izar deepened, even as his responsibilities as Earth's ambassador demanded emotional distance. The situation came to a head when High Counselor Zara revealed Izar's selection as a candidate for interspecies reproductive experiments. The news hit Billy like a physical blow. He retreated to his quarters, knees going weak as he tried to process the implications. A soft knock at his door roused him from his thoughts. Izar entered, her movements graceful despite the bulky environmental suit. "Billy, I wanted to speak with you about the counselor's announcement." He turned to her, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Izar, I don't know what to say. This is all happening so fast." She moved closer, her large eyes searching his face. "I understand your confusion. My own feelings are complex, but I believe this could be a crucial step for both our species." Before Billy could respond, his tablet chimed with an urgent message. He read it quickly, his expression shifting from surprise to dedication. "They've selected the human delegation for the Prilorian homeworld visit," he said, looking up at Izar. "I'm to lead the mission. We leave in a month." Izar's fingers trembled slightly as she reached out, almost but not quite touching his arm. "This is a great honor, Billy, but I sense your hesitation." He met her gaze, acutely aware of the gulf between them, a distance measured not in miles, but in the vast differences of their biology and culture. Yet in that moment, those differences seemed to matter less than the connection they'd forged. "I'm ready for this mission," Billy said firmly, "but I can't help feeling like we're on the brink of something much bigger than either of us anticipated. Whatever happens, Izar, I want you to know." His words were cut off by another blaring alarm. The facility's AI announced a security breach in the lower levels. As they rushed to respond, Billy's last thought was of the challenges that lay ahead, not just for him and Izar, but for the future of human-Prilorian relations. The security breach in the lower levels turned out to be a false alarm, but it set everyone on edge. As Billy and Izar rushed back to the command center, they found the atmosphere tense with anticipation. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity as preparations for the human delegation's visit to the Prilorian homeworld intensified. Billy found himself at the center of a diplomatic storm. U.S. government officials pulled him into endless meetings, emphasizing the critical importance of securing a favorable trade agreement with the Prilorians. They spoke of revolutionary technologies that could transform human society overnight, their eyes gleaming with barely concealed greed. "Sullivan, this is the opportunity of a lifetime," General Hawthorne said, leaning across the conference table. "We need you to push for access to their energy production methods. Imagine what we could do with that kind of power." Billy nodded, feeling the weight of expectation pressing down on him. "I understand, sir, but we need to approach this carefully. The Prilorians aren't just some resource to be exploited." As he left the meeting, he found Izar waiting for him in the hallway. Her large eyes blinked rapidly, a sign Billy had come to recognize as excitement or nervousness. "High Counselor Zara wishes to speak with you," Izar said, her melodious voice tinged with an emotion Billy couldn't quite place. In the Prilorian leader's private chambers, Billy listened as Zara revealed the results of their genetic compatibility studies. "Our Science Council has made significant progress," she said, her iridescent robe shimmering as she moved. "The preliminary findings are promising." Billy's mind raced with the implications. He opened his mouth to respond, but a thunderous explosion rocked the facility before he could speak. Alarms blared as chaos erupted throughout the compound. Billy's training kicked in instantly. He grabbed Izar's hand and sprinted towards the nearest security station, barking orders into his comm link. "We're under attack. All personnel, initiate evacuation protocol Alpha 9. Get the Prilorian diplomats to their ship immediately." Through the facility's windows, Billy caught glimpses of the invading force. His heart sank as he recognized the stolen military equipment. This was no random attack. It was a coordinated strike led by Colonel Jack Hawkins and his extremist group. As they rushed through the corridors, Billy and Izar found themselves separated from the main evacuation group. The sounds of gunfire and energy weapons grew closer. They ducked into a nearby laboratory, hoping to find an alternate route to the landing pad. Instead, they found themselves trapped as Hawkins and 3 of his men burst through the door, weapons raised. "Well, well," Hawkins sneered, his eyes cold with hatred. "If it isn't the alien-loving traitor himself." Billy positioned himself in front of Izar, his mind racing for a way out of this standoff. "Hawkins, you don't understand what you're doing. The Prilorians are here to help us." The colonel's face contorted with rage. "Help us? They're here to use us as breeding stock, to save their dying race by turning humans into their personal incubators." Billy felt Izar tense behind him. He knew he had to de-escalate the situation fast. "That's not true, Hawkins. We've been working together, learning from each other. There's so much potential for both our species if we cooperate." Hawkins raised his weapon, aiming it squarely at Izar. "I've heard enough of your alien-loving propaganda, Sullivan. Step aside, or I'll shoot her right through you." Time seemed to slow down for Billy. He recalled the hours spent with Izar, teaching her about human biology, learning about Prilorian physiology in return. In that split second, he made his decision. Billy lunged forward, his hands striking out with lightning speed. His fingers found the precise pressure point on Hawkins's neck, applying just the right amount of force. The colonel's eyes widened in shock before rolling back as he crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The other attackers, caught off guard by the sudden move, hesitated just long enough for Billy to disarm the closest one. A brief but intense scuffle ensued, ending with all three men subdued. As the sounds of approaching reinforcements filled the air, Billy turned to find Izar staring at him with an expression of awe. "That was remarkable," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I had no idea humans were capable of such precise physical control." Before Billy could respond, a team of human and Prylorian security forces burst into the lab. The immediate danger had passed, but the ramifications of Hawkins's attack were only beginning to unfold. In the days that followed, the facility buzzed with activity as the damage was assessed and security protocols were overhauled. The planned delegation to the Prylorian homeworld was postponed indefinitely, much to the frustration of both human and alien officials. Amidst the chaos, a new face arrived at the compound. Dr. Elena Rodriguez strode through the facility with purpose, her keen eyes taking in every detail of the damaged infrastructure and injured personnel, both human and Prylorian. Billy watched as the xenobiologist moved from patient to patient, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she examined the wounded Prylorians. There was something in her focused gaze that reminded him of Izar's scientific curiosity. Dr. Rodriguez's arrival marked a turning point in the facility's research efforts. Her groundbreaking work on alien physiology quickly gained attention from scientists on both sides. Billy found himself drawn into long discussions with her and Izar, marveling at the depth of knowledge being uncovered. It was during one of these late-night research sessions that Dr. Rodriguez made her startling announcement. "Based on my findings," she said, her voice steady but her eyes alight with the thrill of discovery, "I can conclusively state that natural reproduction between humans and Prylorians is impossible." The silence that followed was deafening. Billy glanced at Izar, trying to gauge her reaction, but her alien features remained unreadable. Dr. Rodriguez continued, "The genetic similarities we've observed are fascinating, but the fundamental biological differences are simply too great to overcome through natural means." As the implications of this revelation sank in, Billy realized that the entire landscape of human-Prylorian relations had shifted once again. The Prylorians could no longer look to humans as a solution to their reproductive crisis. The humans, in turn, had to reevaluate the risks and benefits of aligning themselves with an alien species that might no longer need them. In the midst of this upheaval, Billy found his thoughts returning to Izar. Their bond had only grown stronger through the trials they'd faced together, but now a new set of questions loomed before them. How could they navigate their deepening feelings in light of their biological incompatibility? As Billy grappled with these personal and diplomatic challenges, he began to formulate a new approach. The future of human-Prylorian relations would require more than just political maneuvering or military might. It would demand a comprehensive understanding of both species, their biology, their culture, and their long-term aspirations. With this in mind, Billy drafted a proposal for a joint human-Prylorian scientific task force. Led by Dr. Rodriguez, the team would explore alternative solutions to the Prylorian reproduction crisis while fostering deeper cooperation between the two species. As he prepared to present his idea to both human and Prylorian leadership, Billy couldn't help but feel that they stood on the brink of a new era in interspecies relations. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with scientific, diplomatic, and personal challenges. But as he caught Izar's eye across the room, he felt a surge of commitment. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, bridging the gap between their worlds, one discovery at a time. Tia time. The aftermath of the attack on the Nevada facility left both humans and Prylorians shaken. As the dust settled, Billy found himself thrust into a new role, overseeing the establishment of a cutting-edge research complex nestled deep in the Rocky Mountains. The facility was a marvel of human and Prylorian engineering, its sleek lines and advanced technology, a testament to what their species could achieve together. Billy stood at the entrance, watching as teams of scientists from both worlds streamed inside, their excitement palpable. Dr. Elena Rodriguez strode up beside him, her eyes bright with anticipation. "We're ready to begin, Mr. Sullivan. The genetic sequencing equipment is online, and the Prilorian Biotechnology Lab is fully operational." Billy nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "Let's hope this is the breakthrough we've been waiting for, Doctor." Inside, the complex hummed with activity. Human and Prilorian scientists worked side by side, their differences fading in the face of shared scientific curiosity. Billy watched as Dr. Rodriguez led her team through a series of complex genetic analyses, her fingers flying over holographic displays as she interpreted the data. Weeks turned into months, and progress came in fits and starts. Billy found himself juggling his diplomatic duties with long hours at the research complex, acting as a bridge between the scientific team and the anxious leaders of both species. It was during one of these late-night sessions that Dr. Rodriguez made her announcement. "We've done it," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "We've found a way to combine human and Prilorian genetic material artificially. It's not natural reproduction, but it could be the solution to the Prilorian crisis." The room erupted in cheers, but Billy noticed Izar standing quietly in the corner, her large eyes unreadable. He made his way to her side, speaking softly. "Are you all right?" Izar turned to him, her voice low. "This is a momentous achievement, Billy, but I can't help wondering about the consequences. Are we ready for what comes next?" Before Billy could respond, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A tall, lean man with sharp features strode into the lab, his eyes scanning the room with barely concealed disdain. "Dr. Marcus Chen," he announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "I'm here to take this project to the next level." Billy felt a ripple of unease pass through the assembled scientists. He'd heard of Chen's reputation, brilliant but ruthless, with a penchant for pushing ethical boundaries. The arrival of Dr. Chen marked a turning point in the project. His aggressive approach and unconventional methods quickly put him at odds with Dr. Rodriguez and the more cautious members of the team. Billy found himself mediating increasingly heated debates between the two factions. "We can't rush this," Dr. Rodriguez argued during one particularly tense meeting. "The potential for unintended consequences is too great." Dr. Chen scoffed, his eyes glinting with ambition. "We're on the verge of creating a new species, Doctor. A little risk is necessary for progress." As the scientific debates raged on, Billy found solace in his growing relationship with Izar. They began spending more time together outside of work, exploring the rugged beauty of the Rocky Mountains. One crisp autumn afternoon, they stood atop a rocky outcropping, gazing out at the vast expanse of wilderness before them. Izar turned to Billy, her alien features softened by the golden light. "Your world is beautiful, Billy, so different from my own, and yet I feel at home here." Billy felt his heart swell with emotion. He reached out, his fingers intertwining with Izar's. The gesture was awkward given their physiological differences, but the connection it represented was undeniable. Their moment of peace was shattered by the shrill beep of Billy's communicator. "Sullivan here," he answered, his voice tense. "Sir, we've just received word," came the urgent reply. "A Prilorian science vessel has entered Earth's orbit. They're requesting permission to land and join the research effort." The arrival of the Prilorian ship sent shockwaves through the human population. News broadcasts were filled with images of the massive vessel hovering in orbit, its alien design a stark reminder of the changes Earth was undergoing. Billy found himself thrust into the center of a media storm. He spent hours in press conferences and government briefings, trying to allay fears and promote understanding. "The Prilorians are here as our partners," he explained to a packed auditorium during a town hall meeting. "Their technology and expertise will be invaluable in our joint research efforts." But not everyone was convinced. Reports of anti-alien protests began to surface, and Billy received word that Colonel Jack Hawkins had escaped custody and was rallying his extremist followers. Amidst the growing tension, the research team pressed on. The addition of the Prilorian scientists accelerated their progress, and soon they were ready to take the next crucial step. Billy stood in the observation room, his heart pounding as he watched Dr. Rodriguez and her team prepare for the final stage of their experiment. On the other side of the glass, a complex array of equipment surrounded a small, cylindrical chamber. Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the intercom, uncharacteristically subdued. Initiating final sequence now. The room fell silent as energy pulsed through the equipment. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. And then a soft chime sounded. Dr. Rodriguez's face appeared on the monitor, her eyes wide with wonder. It worked, she breathed. We've created the first viable human Prilorian hybrid embryo. As the implications of this achievement sank in, Billy felt a mix of emotions wash over him. They had done it. They had found a potential solution to the Prilorian reproduction crisis. But he knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with challenges they had yet to face. He turned to find Izar beside him, her expression a mirror of his own complex feelings. Together they looked out at the lab where history had just been made, knowing that the future of both their species had been irrevocably changed. The successful creation of the human Prilorian hybrid embryo sent shockwaves through both scientific and political circles. As Billy watched the tiny life form pulsing with energy in its containment chamber, he knew they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Dr. Rodriguez's team sprang into action, initiating the next crucial phase of the project. A flurry of activity filled the lab as human and Prilorian scientists collaborated on the design of a specialized artificial womb. Billy observed the intricate dance of ideas and technologies, marveling at how seamlessly the two species worked together when united by a common goal. We're combining Prilorian bioadaptive materials with human stem cell cultivation techniques, Dr. Rodriguez explained, her eyes alight with excitement as she guided Billy through a holographic model of the artificial womb. This will allow us to create an environment that can adapt to the hybrid's unique needs as it develops. As news of the breakthrough spread, the world erupted in a cacophony of reactions. Billy's communicator buzzed incessantly with updates from around the globe. In New York, thousands gathered in Times Square, their faces turned up to the massive screens displaying images of the research facility. In Beijing, protesters clashed with police outside the newly established Prilorian consulate. From Tokyo to London, debates raged in parliaments and on street corners alike. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session to address the ethical implications of the hybrid project. Billy watched the proceedings from his office, tension knotting his shoulders, as diplomats and scientists from around the world argued passionately about the potential risks and benefits of creating a new species. "We cannot play God," thundered the representative from Nigeria, his voice echoing through the chamber. "This project must be halted immediately." The Chinese delegate countered, her voice measured but firm. "We stand on the brink of a new era in human evolution. We cannot allow fear to hold us back from this historic opportunity." As the debates raged on, a new figure arrived at the Rocky Mountain complex. Admiral James Hawthorne cut an imposing figure as he strode through the facility's main entrance, his crisp uniform and unwavering focus immediately commanding respect from both human and Prilorian personnel. Billy met the Admiral in the facility's central atrium, extending his hand in greeting. "Welcome to the front lines of interspecies cooperation, Admiral," he said, trying to inject some levity into the tense atmosphere. Hawthorne's grip was firm, his eyes scrutinizing Billy as they shook hands. "Mr. Sullivan," he nodded, "I hope you understand the gravity of the situation we find ourselves in. The eyes of the world are upon us, and not all of them are friendly." Together, Billy and Admiral Hawthorne set about fortifying the research complex. They pored over holographic schematics, integrating human and Prilorian defense technologies to create an impenetrable shield around the facility. "These force field generators," Hawthorne mused, pointing to a cluster of Prilorian devices. "How do they interface with our power grid?" Billy called over a Prilorian engineer who launched into a detailed explanation of the energy conversion process. As the days passed, Billy found himself impressed by Hawthorne's ability to grasp complex alien concepts and integrate them with human military strategy. Inside the lab, tensions were mounting between Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Chen. Billy walked in on a heated argument, their voices rising above the hum of laboratory equipment. "We can't rush this, Marcus," Dr. Rodriguez insisted, her face flushed with frustration. "We're dealing with an entirely new form of life. We need to proceed with caution." Dr. Chen's eyes flashed with impatience. Every day we delay is a day wasted, Elena. We have the means to accelerate the embryo's development. Why not use them? Billy stepped between the two scientists, his voice calm but authoritative. We need to find a balance between progress and prudence. Dr. Chen, I understand your eagerness to push forward, but Dr. Rodriguez is right. We can't afford to take unnecessary risks. Let's focus on optimizing our current protocols before we consider more aggressive approaches. As the research team grappled with these internal conflicts, the world outside continued to react to the momentous news. The Prilorian High Council, impressed by the project's rapid progress, announced plans to construct a permanent embassy in Washington, D.C. Billy watched the announcement on a view screen in his office, flanked by Izar and Admiral Hawthorne. The Prilorian ambassador's multifaceted eyes gleamed as he spoke of a new era of cooperation between their species. This is a significant step, Izar observed, her voice tinged with a mix of hope and apprehension. But I fear it may provoke those who are already suspicious of our intentions. Hawthorne nodded grimly. We've been monitoring chatter from various extremist groups. The rhetoric is becoming increasingly violent. As if to underscore the Admiral's words, reports began flooding in of protests erupting in major cities worldwide. In London, a massive crowd surrounded the Houses of Parliament, their chants echoing off the ancient stonework. In Rio de Janeiro, revelers and protesters clashed in the streets, their confrontations broadcast live across the globe. Recognizing the need to counter the growing wave of misinformation and fear, Billy initiated a series of public education programs. He worked with the facility's IT team to develop virtual reality tours of the research complex, allowing people from around the world to see the work being done firsthand. We have nothing to hide, Billy insisted during a staff meeting. The more people understand what we're doing here, the less they'll fear it. As the public education campaign gained traction, Billy received word of a disturbing development. Colonel Jack Hawkins, the extremist leader who had previously attacked the Nevada facility, had resurfaced. Intelligence reports indicated that he was orchestrating a sophisticated propaganda campaign, using social media and underground networks to spread lies about the hybrid project and Prilorian intentions. Admiral Hawthorne's face was grim as he briefed Billy on the situation. Hawkins is playing on people's fears, painting the Prilorians as invaders and the hybrid project as the first step in a plan to replace humanity. Billy felt a chill run down his spine as he scrolled through some of the viral posts Hawkins had disseminated. The lies were clever, weaving just enough truth with outlandish claims to seem plausible to those already predisposed to mistrust the Prilorians. As the team worked to counter Hawkins' propaganda, a new development in the lab captured everyone's attention. Dr. Rodriguez burst into Billy's office, her eyes wide with excitement and trepidation. "The embryo," she gasped, catching her breath. "It's developing at an unprecedented rate. We're seeing signs of advanced cognitive function that shouldn't be possible at this stage." Billy followed her to the lab where the team had gathered around the artificial womb. The hybrid embryo pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its form already more defined than it should have been at this stage of development. "We need to bring in additional expertise," Billy decided, his mind racing with the implications of this discovery. "Contact Dr. Alexei Volkov. His background in xenopsychology could be crucial in understanding what we're dealing with." As the team prepared for Dr. Volkov's arrival, a new crisis emerged. The hybrid embryo's rapid development was pushing the artificial womb to its limits. Alarms blared through the lab as the containment systems struggled to keep up with the embryo's growing energy output. Dr. Chen seized upon the moment, his voice rising above the chaos. "We need to transfer the embryo to a human surrogate immediately. It's the only way to ensure its survival." Dr. Rodriguez vehemently opposed the idea. "We can't risk exposing a human to unknown factors. We need to upgrade the artificial womb to accommodate the embryo's needs." Billy found himself at the center of the storm, all eyes turning to him for a decision. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him as he weighed the risks and ethical implications of both options. The fate of the hybrid embryo, the research project, and potentially the future of both species hung in the balance. Before Billy could respond, Admiral Hawthorne burst into the lab, his face ashen. We've intercepted communications indicating that Hawkins is planning an imminent attack on the facility, he announced, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. The twin crises, the embryo's accelerated development and the looming threat of attack, converged into a perfect storm. Billy looked around at the faces of his team, human and Prylorian alike, each waiting for his guidance. He took a deep breath, knowing that his next decisions would shape the course of history and reshape the future of both species. Billy's mind raced, weighing the risks and implications of each option. The embryo's accelerated development posed an immediate threat to its survival, while Hawkins's impending attack jeopardized the entire project. He took a deep breath, steadying himself before addressing the team. Dr. Chen, Dr. Rodriguez, I understand the urgency of both your positions, Billy said, his voice calm but authoritative. But we can't risk transferring the embryo to a human surrogate without fully understanding the potential consequences. Our priority must be upgrading the artificial womb. Dr. Rodriguez nodded in agreement, while Dr. Chen's face tightened with frustration. Billy turned to Admiral Hawthorne. Admiral, we need to buy time. How long can we hold off Hawkins's forces? Hawthorne's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. We've already initiated our defense protocols. I've got teams setting up a perimeter, but we're dealing with an unknown number of hostiles. We'll do our best to keep them at bay, but you need to move fast. Billy nodded, then addressed the entire team. All right, people, we're on the clock. Dr. Rodriguez, assemble your best engineers and get started on those upgrades immediately. Dr. Chen, I need you to monitor the embryo's vitals and report any changes. The rest of you, assist where needed or help with the facility's defense preparations. The lab erupted into a flurry of activity. Dr. Rodriguez huddled with her team around holographic schematics of the artificial womb, their voices a rapid-fire exchange of ideas and calculations. Dr. Chen, his earlier frustration replaced by focused drive, calibrated an array of monitoring equipment around the pulsing embryo. Billy followed Admiral Hawthorne to the facility's command center, where they could oversee both the scientific progress and the defensive efforts. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing thermal imaging of the surrounding mountains and real-time updates from the perimeter teams. We've deployed a mix of human special forces and Prylorian security personnel, Hawthorne explained, gesturing to the glowing dots representing their defensive positions. The Prylorians brought some impressive tech to the table. Those sensor arrays there? They can detect the faintest electromagnetic signatures. If Hawkins so much as turns on a radio within 10 miles, we'll know about it. As they watched, an alert flashed on one of the screens. A technician called out, "Sir, we're picking up chatter on encrypted channels. It matches Hawkins' known communication patterns." Hawthorne leaned in, his face grim. "Can we get a fix on their location?" The technician shook his head. "Negative, sir. They're using some kind of advanced scrambling tech. We can intercept, but we can't pinpoint the source." Billy felt a chill run down his spine. They've gotten their hands on Prylorian technology. This is worse than we thought. Before Hawthorne could respond, another alert sounded. This time, it was Dr. Rodriguez's face that appeared on the main screen. "Mr. Sullivan, we've completed the initial upgrades to the artificial womb. We're ready to begin the transfer process." Billy's heart raced as he realized they were entering the most critical phase of the operation. "Understood, Doctor. Proceed with caution. I'm on my way." As Billy hurried back to the lab, alarms blared throughout the facility. Admiral Hawthorne's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, this is not a drill. We have multiple hostiles breaching the outer perimeter. Initiate lockdown procedures immediately." The corridors became a chaos of rushing bodies as staff members scrambled to secure their stations. Billy pushed through the crowd, his mind focused solely on reaching the lab and ensuring the safety of the embryo. He burst through the lab doors to find Dr. Rodriguez and her team carefully maneuvering the artificial womb onto a specially designed transport platform. The embryo within pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its form now clearly visible through the translucent walls of its artificial habitat. "Status report," Billy demanded, his eyes fixed on the delicate operation before him. Dr. Chen looked up from his monitoring station, his face a mix of awe and concern. "The embryo's vital signs are stable, but its neural activity is off the charts. We're seeing patterns that shouldn't be possible at this stage of development. Before Billy could inquire further, the entire facility shook with a thunderous explosion. The lights flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, the artificial womb's life support systems wavered. "Imp!" Dr. Rodriguez shouted, her hands flying over the control panel. "They're trying to disable our systems." Billy's training kicked in as he assessed the situation. "We need to get the embryo to a secure location. Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Chen, continue with the transfer. I'll coordinate with security to clear a path." As the scientists worked feverishly to stabilize the artificial womb, Billy contacted Admiral Hawthorne. "Admiral, we need to move the package. What's our best route?" Hawthorne's voice came through, punctuated by the sound of gunfire. "They've breached the main entrance, but we're holding them back. Take the emergency elevator to sub-level 3. We've got a reinforced safe room prepared." Billy relayed the instructions to the team, then took up a defensive position at the lab's entrance. He could hear the sounds of battle drawing nearer, the sharp cracks of gunfire interspersed with the distinctive whine of Prilorian energy weapons. As Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Chen carefully guided the transport platform towards the elevator, a group of armed extremists rounded the corner. Billy's military instincts took over as he opened fire, providing cover for the retreating scientists. The firefight was intense but brief. Billy's precision and the extremists' lack of proper training tipped the scales in his favor. As the last attacker fell, Billy hurried to join the others in the elevator. The descent to sub-level 3 felt agonizingly slow. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the embryo's vital signs, her face tight with concentration. Dr. Chen kept his hand on the transport platform's controls, ready to make micro-adjustments at a moment's notice. When the elevator doors finally opened, they were met by a squad of Prilorian warriors led by Commander Kira. The alien soldiers moved with fluid grace, their advanced armor gleaming under the emergency lights. "This way," Commander Kira instructed, her multifaceted eyes scanning for potential threats. "We have secured the safe room." As they hurried down the corridor, Billy couldn't help but marvel at the surreal nature of the situation. Humans and Prilorians fighting side by side to protect a hybrid embryo that represented the future of both species. They reached the safe room just as another explosion rocked the facility. The reinforced doors slid shut behind them, sealing them in a cocoon of advanced human and Prilorian technology. Dr. Rodriguez immediately began connecting the artificial womb to the room's power supply and life support systems. Dr. Chen calibrated the monitoring equipment, his fingers flying over holographic displays. "Vital signs stabilizing," Dr. Chen announced, a note of relief in his voice. "The embryo appears to have weathered the transfer without any significant stress." Billy allowed himself a moment of hope, but he knew the battle was not nearly finished. Outside the safe room, the fate of the facility, and perhaps the future of human-Prilorian relations, hung in the balance. Commander Kira approached Billy, her alien features set in a determined expression. "Your Admiral Hawthorne fights with honor," she said, her translated voice tinged with respect. "But Hawkins and his forces are formidable. We must prepare for the possibility that they may reach this location." Billy nodded, his mind already formulating contingency plans. He looked at the artificial womb, where the hybrid embryo continued its impossible growth, oblivious to the conflict raging around it. In that moment, Billy realized that their struggle was about more than just scientific achievement or interspecies cooperation. They were fighting for a future where the boundaries between human and alien could blur, where the potential for understanding and coexistence was limitless. As if sensing his thoughts, the embryo pulsed with a surge of energy, its developing form shifting in ways that defied both human and Prilorian expectations. Dr. Rodriguez gasped, her eyes wide as she studied the readouts. "Mr. Sullivan," she called, her voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. "You need to see this. The embryo's neural patterns, they're changing again. It's almost as if..." Before she could finish her sentence, a series of explosive charges detonated along the safe room's outer wall. The reinforced structure held, but the message was clear. Colonel Hawkins and his forces had arrived, and they would stop at nothing to destroy what they saw as an abomination. Billy squared his shoulders, preparing himself for the fight of his life. As he checked his weapon and surveyed the determined faces around him, human and Prilorian alike, he knew that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of the hybrid embryo, but the course of history itself. The pulsing of the embryo intensified, its energy signature fluctuating wildly on the monitoring screens. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she studied the readouts, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "Mr. Sullivan," she called, her voice tight with urgency. "The embryo's growth rate has increased exponentially. We need to act fast." Billy moved swiftly to her side, scanning the data scrolling across the screen. "What are our options, Doctor?" Dr. Chen joined them, his face etched with concern. "The current artificial womb can't sustain this level of growth for much longer. We need to expand its capacity immediately." As if to emphasize the point, a series of alarms blared from the monitoring equipment. The embryo's form shifted visibly within the translucent walls of its artificial habitat, its features becoming more defined with each passing moment. "Initiate emergency protocols," Billy ordered, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Dr. Rodriguez, start working on expanding the womb's capacity. Dr. Chen, monitor the embryo's vitals and alert us to any changes." The scientific team sprang into action, their movements precise and coordinated despite the pressure. Commander Kira approached Billy, her alien features set in a grim expression. "The attack on this facility has not gone unnoticed," she said, her translated voice tinged with concern. "My superiors on the Prilorian High Council have been in contact with your world's leaders. The situation has escalated beyond our control." Before Billy could respond, a priority communication alert flashed on the main screen. Admiral Hawthorne's face appeared, his expression grave. "Sullivan, we've got a situation brewing. The UN has called an emergency session to discuss the hybrid project. There's talk of relocating the entire operation to a more secure location." Billy's mind raced, weighing the implications. "Admiral, we can't move the embryo in its current state. The risk is too high." Hawthorne nodded, his eyes sharp. "I understand, but we may not have a choice. I'm sending you the details of a new initiative. Operation Stardust. We're looking at moving the project to an orbital station." As the Admiral outlined the plan, Billy felt a mix of awe and apprehension. The idea of continuing their work in orbit, away from terrestrial threats, was appealing. But the logistics of such a move seemed daunting, especially given the embryo's fragile state. Over the next few weeks, the Rocky Mountain complex became a hive of activity. As Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked tirelessly to stabilize and expand the artificial womb, Billy found himself coordinating with both human and Prilorian engineers to design a specialized shuttle capable of safely transporting their precious cargo. The debate over the use of Prilorian teleportation technology raged for days. Dr. Chen advocated for its use, arguing that it would minimize the time the embryo spent in transit. Dr. Rodriguez, however, was adamant about the risks. "We can't predict how teleportation might affect the embryo's cellular structure," she argued during one particularly heated meeting. "The shuttle may take longer, but at least we can control the environment every step of the way." In the end, Billy sided with Dr. Rodriguez. The shuttle design moved forward, incorporating the best of both human and Prilorian life support systems. As the launch date approached, Billy found himself working closely with Commander Kira to develop security protocols for the orbital station. The Prilorian warriors' tactical insights proved invaluable, as they created a joint security force that leveraged the strengths of both species. "Your people fight with great courage," Kira remarked during one of their planning sessions. "But you lack the technological edge that could give you a decisive advantage." Billy nodded, studying the holographic model of the station's defense grid. "That's why this collaboration is so important. We're stronger together than we ever could be apart." The day of the launch dawned clear and bright. The shuttle stood on the launch pad, its sleek form a testament to human Prilorian cooperation. Inside, the artificial womb was secured in a specially designed chamber, surrounded by a team of scientists led by Dr. Rodriguez. As Billy boarded the lead escort ship, he caught sight of Izar, the Prilorian scientist whose work had made the hybrid embryo possible. She approached him, her alien features arranged in what he had come to recognize as an expression of concern. "The eyes of both our worlds are upon us, Billy," she said softly. What we do today will shape the future of our species for generations to come. Billy nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. We're ready, Iser. Let's make history. The launch sequence initiated, and the shuttle rose majestically into the sky, flanked by a mixed escort of human and Prilorian vessels. As they ascended through the atmosphere, Billy's comm system crackled to life. "Multiple bogies incoming," a voice shouted. "Energy signatures match Hawkins's stolen Prilorian tech." Billy's training kicked in as he barked orders, coordinating the defense efforts. Human fighter pilots executed intricate maneuvers, while Prilorian gunners unleashed salvos of energy weapons. The battle was fierce but brief, with the attackers ultimately forced to retreat. As the shuttle docked with the Genesis station, Billy allowed himself a moment of relief. But the real challenge was just beginning. The artificial womb was carefully transferred to its new home, a state-of-the-art laboratory at the heart of the station. No sooner had the research team settled in than Dr. Chen made a startling announcement. "The embryo," he said, his voice filled with awe, "it's developed to the equivalent of a full-term human fetus. We need to prepare for emergence immediately." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity as the team raced to set up a specialized nursery. Billy found himself assisting Dr. Volkov in calibrating life support systems designed to accommodate the hybrid's unique physiology. As news of the impending birth spread, Billy's communication channels were flooded with requests from world leaders, scientists, and media representatives, all clamoring for access to witness the historic event. Standing before the artificial womb, watching the fully formed hybrid infant floating peacefully within, Billy felt a surge of emotion. This being, neither fully human nor Prilorian, represented the ultimate bridge between their species. As the first signs of the emergence process began, he steeled himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. The future of human-Prilorian relations, perhaps even the course of galactic history, was about to be rewritten, and Billy Sullivan found himself at the center of it all, ready to face the unknown. As the hybrid infant floated peacefully within the artificial womb, the Genesis station burst into a flurry of activity. Dr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the din, her words crisp and authoritative. "Initiate emergence protocols. We're entering the final phase." The research team moved with practiced efficiency, each member falling into their assigned roles. Dr. Chen calibrated the artificial womb systems, initiating a series of simulated contractions designed to mimic the natural birthing process. Billy watched the proceedings with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. He'd faced countless challenges in his career, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. The birth of the first human-Prilorian hybrid was about to rewrite the course of history. Suddenly, a series of alarms blared from the monitoring equipment. Dr. Chen's fingers flew across the holographic interface, his expression shifting from concentration to concern. "We have a problem," he announced, his voice tense. "The hybrid's vital signs are destabilizing rapidly." Dr. Rodriguez rushed to his side, her eyes scanning the data. "What's causing it?" Dr. Chen shook his head, frustration evident in his voice. "The hybrid's unique genetic makeup, it's rejecting the artificial amniotic fluid. If we don't act fast, we could lose it." The words hit Billy like a physical blow. After everything they'd been through, after all the sacrifices made by both humans and Prilorians, they couldn't fail now. His mind raced, drawing on everything he'd learned about both species' biology. "What if we create a new fluid?" Billy suggested, the idea forming even as he spoke. "Something tailored specifically for the hybrid's physiology." Dr. Rodriguez looked at him skeptically. "That's never been done before. The risks are less than doing nothing," Billy interrupted. He turned to Izar, the Prilorian scientist who'd been instrumental in the hybrid's creation. "We could use a combination of human stem cells and Prilorian regenerative compounds. Create something the hybrid's body will recognize as familiar." Izar's multifaceted eyes gleamed with understanding. "It's possible, but we'd need genetic material from both species to act as a base." "Use mine," Billy said without hesitation. He looked at Izar. "And yours, if you're willing." The Prilorian scientist nodded, her alien features set in drive. Dr. Rodriguez exhaled sharply, weighing the options. The hybrid's vital signs continued to fluctuate wildly on the monitors. "All right," she said finally. "Let's do it, but we need to move fast." The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Billy and Izar underwent rapid genetic extraction procedures, while Dr. Chen led a team in synthesizing the new biocompatible fluid. The air in the laboratory crackled with tension, every member of the team acutely aware of the stakes. As they worked, a new crisis emerged. Commander Kira's voice came through the station's communication system, her translated words imbued with urgency. "We're under attack. A group of human extremists has launched a cyber attack on our systems." Billy's heart sank. Of course, there were those who would seek to destroy what they didn't understand. "What's their target?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Life support systems," Kira confirmed. "They're trying to terminate the hybrid." Billy exchanged a grim look with Dr. Rodriguez. They couldn't afford any distractions, not now. "Can you handle it?" he asked Kira. "Affirmative," the Prilorian commander responded. "I'm working with your cybersecurity experts. We'll keep the station secure." As Kira and her team engaged in a digital battle with the attackers, the research team focused on their own life-or-death struggle. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Chen announced that the new fluid was ready. With painstaking care, they introduced the synthesized solution into the artificial womb. The hybrid's body, previously racked with tremors, began to still. Its vital signs, erratic only moments before, started to stabilize. A collective sigh of relief swept through the laboratory, but their respite was short-lived. New alarms sounded, different from before. "The hybrid," Dr. Chen called out, his eyes wide as he studied the readouts. "Its development, it's accelerating beyond our projections." Before anyone could respond, Commander Kira's voice came through again. "Cyber attack neutralized, station systems secure." The news was welcome, but it paled in comparison to what was happening within the artificial womb. The hybrid's form was changing rapidly, its features becoming more defined with each passing second. "It's ready," Dr. Rodriguez announced, her voice filled with a mix of awe and apprehension. "We need to proceed with emergence immediately." The team sprang into action, preparing for a birth that was happening far earlier than any of them had anticipated. Billy found himself assisting Dr. Volkov in adjusting the environmental controls of the specialized nursery, ensuring it would be ready to receive its unique occupant. As the final preparations were made, a hush fell over the laboratory. The artificial womb systems whirred and pulsed, mimicking the final stages of natural labor. Then, with a rush of fluid and a series of soft chimes from the monitoring equipment, it was done. The hybrid emerged into the world, its first breath drawn under the watchful eyes of humans and Prilorians alike. Billy found himself moving closer, drawn by an inexplicable urge to see the being that represented the future of both their species. The hybrid was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its body structure was fundamentally human, but there was an undeniable alien quality to its features. Its skin had a subtle blue tint, and its eyes, larger than a human infant's, seemed to take in everything around it with startling awareness. Dr. Rodriguez conducted a rapid series of tests, her movements efficient but gentle. "Incredible," she murmured. "Its physical development, it's already equivalent to that of a human toddler." As if to confirm her words, the hybrid's gaze focused on Billy. Its eyes, a swirling mix of human iris patterns and Prilorian bioluminescence, seemed to convey an intelligence far beyond its apparent age. The moment was interrupted by a priority communication alert. Admiral Hawthorne's face appeared on the main screen, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "Congratulations on the successful birth," he said, his eyes darting to the hybrid visible in the background. "But we've got a situation developing. The UN has called an emergency session to discuss the hybrid's legal status. There's talk of creating an entirely new classification." Billy nodded, understanding the implications. The birth of the hybrid wasn't just a scientific achievement. It was a political and social earthquake that would reshape human-Prilorian relations for generations to come. As the team began preparations to care for and study their unprecedented charge, Billy found himself drawn back to the hybrid. Izar joined him, her alien features arranged in what he recognized as an expression of wonder. "What do you think it means for our future?" Billy asked softly. Izar's response was interrupted by a sudden surge of energy from the hybrid. The infant's body glowed briefly, and for a moment, objects in the nearby vicinity seemed to shift and distort. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the stunned silence that followed. Did you see that? The hybrid, it just manipulated gravitational fields. That's not an ability either humans or Prilorians possess. The implications of this development hung heavy in the air. As the team exchanged glances of mingled excitement and apprehension, Billy realized that the birth of the hybrid was just the beginning. The true challenge lay ahead, understanding and nurturing a being that had the potential to surpass both its parent species in ways they had yet to imagine. Imagine. The research team exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of awe and trepidation. As the days passed, Nova's development continued at an unprecedented rate. Within weeks, the hybrid child had reached the physical appearance of a human adolescent, their body a perfect blend of human and Prilorian features. Their skin retained its subtle blue tint, and their eyes glowed with an inner light that seemed to pulse with intelligence. Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked around the clock, documenting every aspect of Nova's growth. Billy often found himself in the observation room, watching as Nova effortlessly solved complex mathematical equations that had stumped the brightest minds on the station. It's remarkable, Dr. Chen said, standing beside Billy. Nova's cognitive abilities are off the charts. They're not just recalling information, they're making intuitive leaps that are years ahead of our current understanding. Billy nodded, his eyes fixed on Nova. What about their physical abilities? As if in response, Nova stood from the desk where they had been working and moved to an open area of the room. With a grace that seemed impossible for their rapidly grown body, they began a series of acrobatic movements that would have challenged even the most elite human athletes. As they moved, their skin briefly shimmered with a bioluminescent glow, a trait inherited from their Prilorian parent. Dr. Rodriguez entered the room, her eyes widening at the display. We've been running tests on Nova's physical capabilities, she explained. Their strength and agility surpass both human and Prilorian norms. And their regenerative abilities, she shook her head in amazement. A cut that would take days to heal on a human closes in minutes for Nova. As word of Nova's extraordinary abilities spread beyond the confines of the Genesis station, the political landscape began to shift. Admiral Hawthorne's face appeared on the main screen of the research lab, his expression grave. We've got a situation developing, he announced. Earth's governments and the Prilorian High Council are demanding more information about Nova. Some factions see the hybrid as a bridge between our species, but others, he paused, his mind focuseding. Others view Nova as a potential threat. Billy felt a surge of protectiveness. A threat? Nova's just a child, regardless of their abilities. Admiral Hawthorne nodded. I agree, but not everyone sees it that way. I've been appointed to head a new joint human-Prilorian security task force. Our job is to ensure the safety of Nova and the station while maintaining diplomatic relations. As the Admiral outlined the new security protocols, Billy's attention was drawn to Nova, who had stopped their acrobatics and was now watching the screen intently. Their eyes, a swirling mix of human and Prilorian, seemed to hold a depth of understanding far beyond their apparent years. In the weeks that followed, Billy and Izar found themselves spending more and more time with Nova. Despite the hybrid's rapid physical and mental development, there was still a childlike quality to their curiosity about the world around them. Tell me about Earth, Nova asked one day, their voice a melodic blend of human and Prilorian tones. And about the Prilorian homeworld, what are they like? Billy and Izar exchanged glances, each feeling a surge of emotion at Nova's innocent question. They spent hours sharing stories of their respective worlds, watching as Nova absorbed the information with rapt attention. As their bond with Nova grew stronger, Billy began to feel conflicted about his role on the station. He was supposed to be an impartial liaison, but how could he remain detached when he felt such a strong connection to the hybrid child? His concerns were echoed by some members of the station's staff. Dr. Volkov pulled him aside after a briefing, his expression worried. You and Izar are getting very close to Nova, he said. There are concerns about potential conflicts of interest. Billy bristled at the implication, but knew he couldn't dismiss it outright. The situation was unprecedented, and they were all navigating uncharted territory. The delicate balance on the station was further strained when Nova made a breakthrough in propulsion technology. The hybrid had been studying the station's engines, and in a burst of insight, developed a new system that could revolutionize space travel. Admiral Hawthorne's reaction was a mix of excitement and concern. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked during a secure briefing. "This technology could open up vast regions of the galaxy for exploration. But it also has significant military applications. Both human and Prylorian military leaders are clamoring for access." The situation reached a boiling point when Nova expressed a desire to leave the station. "I want to see the worlds you've told me about," they said to Billy and Izar. "I want to explore, to learn more." The request sent shockwaves through the station's leadership. Allowing Nova to leave could pose enormous security risks and potentially upset the fragile political balance between humans and Prylorians. As debates raged about Nova's future, a new threat emerged. Senator Marcus Blackwood, a charismatic but radical human politician, launched a vicious propaganda campaign against the hybrid project. "The existence of this hybrid abomination threatens the very fabric of human society," Blackwood declared in a widely broadcast speech. "We must terminate this misguided experiment and isolate ourselves from the alien influence of the Prylorians." The senator's words struck a chord with a segment of the human population, leading to protests and even isolated acts of violence against Prylorians on Earth. In response to the growing crisis, Dr. Chen proposed a bold plan. "We should create more hybrids," he argued during an emergency meeting of the station's leadership. "With a larger hybrid population, we could normalize their existence and bridge the gap between our species." The proposal sparked intense debate. Some saw it as a path to greater understanding and cooperation, while others feared it would only escalate tensions. As the arguments continued, Nova made an unexpected breakthrough. They developed a method of nonverbal communication that allowed for the instantaneous transfer of complex ideas between individuals, regardless of species. "This could change everything," Dr. Rodriguez exclaimed as she observed Nova demonstrating the technique. "Imagine a world without language barriers, where humans and Prylorians could share thoughts and emotions directly." Recognizing the potential of Nova's discovery and the escalating tensions surrounding the hybrid project, Admiral Hawthorne made a decisive move. He organized a high-level summit on the Genesis station, inviting representatives from Earth's major powers and the Prylorian High Council. "It's time for them to meet Nova in person," he announced. "We need to address the future of human-Prylorian relations head-on." As preparations for the summit began, Billy and Izar worked closely with Nova, helping them understand the complex political landscape they would be facing. "Your words and actions will have a profound impact on the future of both our species," Billy explained gently. "It's important to be diplomatic, to find common ground." Nova nodded, their eyes bright with drive. "I want to help bring our peoples together," they said. "I have ideas I want to share at the summit." As the day of the summit approached, the Genesis station buzzed with activity. Security measures were heightened to unprecedented levels, and the atmosphere crackled with tension and anticipation. Billy stood with Izar and Nova, watching as the first delegates began to arrive. Human diplomats in crisp suits mingled with Prylorian representatives in their shimmering ceremonial garb. The future of interstellar relations, and possibly the course of both human and Prylorian civilizations, hung in the balance. Nova took a deep breath, their unique features set in an expression of willpower. "I'm ready," they said, looking at Billy and Izar. "Let's make history." As they moved towards the conference room where the summit would be held, Billy couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and apprehension. Whatever the outcome, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. As Billy, Izar, and Nova approached the conference room, the air crackled with nervous energy. Delegates from Earth and the Prylorian homeworld filled the corridors, their voices a cacophony of different languages and tones. Human diplomats in tailored suits stood out against the shimmering, iridescent garments of their Prylorian counterparts. Nova's eyes darted from face to face, taking in the diversity of those gathered. Billy placed a reassuring hand on their shoulder. "Remember," he said softly, You're the bridge between our worlds. Just be yourself. The conference room doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the circular chamber was divided into two semicircles, one for the human delegates, the other for the Prilorians. At the center stood a raised platform where speakers would address the assembly. Admiral Hawthorne took the podium first, his weathered face set in a mask of diplomatic neutrality. "Esteemed delegates," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed room, "we stand at a crossroads in the history of our species." As Hawthorne spoke, Billy observed the reactions of the delegates. Some nodded in agreement, while others frowned or whispered to their neighbors. His gaze lingered on Senator Blackwood, whose face was a storm of impossibly strong anger. High Counselor Zara of the Prilorians spoke next. Her ethereal voice seemed to resonate within the minds of all present. "For too long, our peoples have viewed each other through a lens of fear and misunderstanding. Today, we have an opportunity to change that perception." The debate that followed was intense. Delegates from both sides argued passionately about the implications of the hybrid project and the future of interspecies relations. Senator Blackwood's turn at the podium was particularly venomous. "This abomination," he spat, gesturing towards Nova, "represents the greatest threat humanity has ever faced. We must protect the purity of our species at all costs." Murmurs of agreement and dissent rippled through the human delegates. Billy felt Nova tense beside him, but the hybrid's face remained impassive. Finally, it was Nova's turn to address the assembly. As they stepped onto the platform, a hush fell over the room. Nova closed their eyes, took a deep breath, and then opened them, revealing swirling pools of blue and green. Suddenly, every being in the room gasped in unison. Billy felt a presence in his mind, gentle yet unmistakable. Images, emotions, and concepts flowed into his consciousness, bypassing language entirely. He understood on a fundamental level Nova's perspective and experiences. Through this shared mental link, Nova revealed the truth of their existence. Billy saw flashes of DNA strands, twisting and combining, unlocking dormant potential within both human and Prilorian genomes. He felt the shock ripple through the assembly as Nova unveiled the ancient connection between the two species. As the mental link faded, Nova spoke aloud, their voice a harmonious blend of human and Prilorian tones. "We are not as different as we once believed," they said. "Our shared ancestry offers us a unique opportunity to come together and explore the galaxy as one united force." Nova went on to propose the Joint Human-Prilorian Exploration Initiative, outlining how the new propulsion technology could be used to venture into uncharted regions of space. The room erupted into a frenzy of discussion as delegates debated the merits and risks of such an ambitious plan. Senator Blackwood jumped to his feet, his face red with fury. "This is nothing more than a ploy to weaken humanity," he shouted. "We cannot allow ourselves to be subsumed by alien influence." Before the situation could escalate further, Billy stepped forward. Drawing on years of diplomatic experience and his unique position as Nova's guardian, he addressed the assembly. "I've had the privilege of watching Nova grow and develop," he began, his voice steady and clear. "In them, I've seen the best of both our species. Their existence doesn't diminish us. It elevates us, showing us what we can become when we embrace our differences and work together." Izar joined him, her alien features arranged in an expression of earnest sincerity. "As a Prilorian who has lived and worked alongside humans, I can attest to the strength that comes from diversity. Our differences are not weaknesses to be feared, but assets to be celebrated." Their words seemed to resonate with many of the delegates, softening the hard lines of division that had dominated the summit thus far. The atmosphere in the room began to shift, tension giving way to a cautious optimism. At this critical juncture, Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, datapad in hand. "If I may," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, "I have new research that I believe is relevant to these proceedings." With a few quick taps, she projected a holographic display for all to see. Complex genetic maps and ancient star charts filled the air above the delegates' heads. "Our latest findings suggest that the genetic compatibility between humans and Prilorians is not a coincidence," she explained, her eyes shining with excitement. "There is evidence of ancient interbreeding between our species, possibly facilitated by a common spacefaring ancestor. This revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Even Senator Blackwood seemed momentarily stunned into silence. The implications were staggering, challenging millennia of assumptions about the origins of both civilizations. As the summit neared its conclusion, Admiral Hawthorne called for a vote on Nova's proposal. The tension in the room was palpable as delegates cast their ballots. Billy held his breath, acutely aware of the historical significance of this moment. The results appeared on the main screen, an overwhelming majority in favor of the Joint Exploration Initiative. Cheers erupted from both human and Prylorian delegates. Billy saw Prylorians embracing humans, their bioluminescent skin glowing with joy. Even some of Senator Blackwood's supporters seemed swept up in the mood of unity and optimism. In the days that followed, the Genesis station hummed with activity as it was transformed into the headquarters for the new Joint Interstellar Exploration Initiative. Nova, appointed as the initiative's director, worked tirelessly to coordinate the efforts of human and Prylorian scientists and engineers. Billy and Izar found themselves in new roles as cultural advisors, helping to smooth over the inevitable misunderstandings that arose as the two species learned to work more closely together. Their unique experiences made them invaluable in bridging the gap between human and Prylorian perspectives. As the launch date for the first joint exploration mission approached, Nova made a final announcement to the station's crew. "My rapid growth and development have stabilized," they explained, their voice carrying a note of relief. "I will now age at a rate similar to both humans and Prylorians." Billy felt a weight lift from his shoulders at this news. He had worried about Nova's accelerated life cycle, fearing they might burn too brightly and too briefly. Now, it seemed, they would have the time to fully explore their potential and guide this new era of cooperation. The day of the launch arrived, marked by a grand ceremony on the Genesis station. The exploration vessel, christened Unity, stood ready in the docking bay, its sleek lines a testament to the combined engineering prowess of humans and Prylorians. Nova stood at the helm, flanked by a diverse crew of both species. As Billy and Izar watched from the observation deck, their hands intertwined, Nova addressed the assembled crowd. "Today, we embark on a journey not just across the stars, but across the boundaries that have long divided us," Nova said, their voice filled with purpose. "Together, we will explore the unknown, facing whatever challenges lie ahead as one united force." The docking bay doors opened, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. With a burst of its new hybrid engines, the Unity launched into the starry void, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of two civilizations now inextricably linked. As the ship disappeared from view, Billy turned to Izar, seeing in her alien eyes the same mix of pride, excitement, and apprehension he felt. "Where do you think they'll go?" he asked softly. Izar's skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns. "Wherever they go," she replied, "they go together. And that's what matters most."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.